在谈判的过程中，是否感到困住，被 sales 的话术感到逃不出去吗？今天的单元让我们来学习如何有效地逃脱这种困境。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. On this podcast, we've talked quite a bit about persuasion and convincing other people of your ideas. But what happens if you're in a situation where someone is trying a little too hard to persuade you, and you feel like they're not quite being honest about what's going on? In the US, we have this idea of a used car salesman type of technique, where they use a lot of manipulation to convince you of something. Today, we want to talk about when you get that feeling that you might be being manipulated. How do you get out of it?
当我在看这个相关的 resource 的时候，就整个让我想到当时在美国买车子的那种困境。那我觉得当时大概也是因为比较年轻，没有什么太多的生活经验，所以呢，我觉得我很希望这些非常有用，而且呢很实用的这些技巧，能够帮助我们逃脱困境，这种话术的困境，我希望能够分享给大家。
The first technique that someone might use on you, we're actually going to refer to as a double bind. This was not specifically in the video resource, but it is something that we have come across quite recently. A double bind is where someone gives you a few options and shows you these options like they're the only thing you can choose, but none of the options are that good for you. And what they're trying to do is manipulate you into answering a question or taking a path that is not necessarily to your benefit. So, for example, you're having an argument with someone and they go, well, you're either incompetent or too naive to understand what's going on. So they've put two quote-unquote options in front of you that you can choose, but none of these make you look good. So in the case of, let's say, again, like a used car salesman, they may be like, you can only choose the Mercedes or the BMW. And the BMW has these benefits, the Mercedes has these benefits, but you didn't go there for either of these options. But because they have presented them to you as though these are your only options, now you feel compelled to answer this question.
对，我觉得当对方给我们比如说这边有 option A 跟 option B， 你要选哪一个，好像我们蛮多的人就会觉得说 Yeah, I have to choose one or another, but actually we don't, right? 这种事情常常会发生。 So a counter statement that or counter question that we can have is, what other options do we have?
Or you can make it as simple as, so what's my third option? And what you're doing is you're showing the person you recognize that you are not stuck only in these things. So the counter to someone continually doing this to you is always ask for, what is my other option? What is my third option? And very often they do have to offer that to you. Or again, their manipulation technique may not work as well because they're trying to force you into this idea of, oh, I have options, I must choose A or B. But then it's like, no. Tell me what the other things are.
Yeah. So the second one, actually, I had this personal experience, is that they will try to dictate your mental state or your emotional state. For example, They may say, oh, you're clearly confused. I don't think you understand what I'm talking about. You're looking so mad right now, or you're not in the right headspace.
In the past, we talked about Chris Voss's idea of labeling. In general, when you're in negotiation or persuasion, labeling can be a really good technique in order to get the other side to explain. But in this case, labeling can also be a very manipulative technique where you're purposely labeling something as a way to enforce your own standpoint. So if I was like, wow, you're so emotional right now, like you really need to calm down before we have this discussion. But if it's the case where the other person has been continuously poking you or trying to make you angry, so like sometimes people will get the other person to be really angry so that they can end the argument and be like, you're so emotional, I can't talk to you right now.
So my personal experience about this is that, yeah, I was buying a car and I was pulled to the back room, right? They always do that. 他把你拉到一个比较小的房间，而且是在很后面的房间。And then they start giving me options of additional warranty, right? That's how they profit, obviously. So they gave me a lot of different options and they try to over-explain. 我觉得这也是另外一种 They may over-explain a lot of details, 让你真的好像感到有点 confused. But the thing is, at the time, I truly felt like, I don't need this. Why am I getting this? This is a new car that I'm getting. I don't need additional warranty. 然后他就丢了一句 You look like you don't understand what I'm talking about. 因为他可能知道就是我不是从这个国家来的 And that immediately, I always remember that sentence. I'm like, no, I understand you perfectly. So 那个时候呢，我真的觉得他就是在 trying to like dictate my emotional or mental states. So a way to counter was advice in this video that we linked down below is you can say, why do you say that? Or I disagree.
So simply calling out, like, why do you think I'm confused? Is there something I said or did? And then now they have to explain. In the case of labeling, you seem upset about this. The intention is to get to the other person to explain why they're upset. But now you can also use that to break it. So if someone's like, yeah, you seem really confused, you can just be like, oh, I'm sorry. Is there something I did that made me look confused? Because I actually understand what's going on, right? Or going back to that first technique where you're just like, no, I'm not really confused. I'm just looking for a third option. These options just don't make sense to me. I really think there's got to be a different way to handle this.
Where you can say, no, I understand you perfectly. I just don't like these options. Just be honest about that. So in order to get out of that situation, it's just not to let them, fog you into that situation. Now, the third one is that they may present their opinions as fact. And I think this is interesting because nowadays, opinions and fact are often things that we kind of mix together.
The easiest way to spot this is they usually don't have a statistic, a data, or a number, or some kind of proof point to back up what they're saying. So they just may be like, yeah, Tesla is definitely the most popular car that's being sold right now. Now, that may seem reasonable because if you drive around outside, you'll probably notice a lot of Teslas recently. But if they're doing it as a way to like get you to FOMO, fear of missing out, like, oh, I have to buy this because it is the most popular car. This is the best car. Now you have to look back and be like, is that actually true? Like I may have noticed, or I may not have a bias to notice, but going back to is like, what proof is there? And that key question of what does that have to do with me? Right? That's a nice opinion and you're trying to get me interested, but why is that the best option for me?
And another situation is they may say, oh, you always say this, or you always look mad when you come to a meeting. Like you always, 这个字 always. Again, they want to put you in a situation or a state of mind to believe that's what you actually do. To counter that, you can simply say, how do you know? Just let them explain to you.
In this case, again, it is to your benefit to make them clarify where they're coming from. Oh, can you give me an example of that? Or is there any information or proof to back that up? Do you have any data to show me? now, whether it's the first scenario where it's like someone's like, no, this is the best thing that you can buy. How do you know the best? How do you know it's the best for me? Or in this case where someone's trying to label you, oh, you're always angry. You always get upset about this. Then pushing back and being like, could you clarify? What do you mean by that? When has this happened before?
The next one is, and I love this one, ambiguous social proof, right? We all care about what other people think, right? Social proof, 也就是别人喜欢什么东西，我们应该要喜欢这个东西, right? So I think in a lot of like marketing, sales techniques, we often use social proof. But they can also use this as a manipulation. So they may say, everyone at this party all love this car, or your boss actually said this to me, and we all know that this is the truth.
Oh, everyone wealthy, this is definitely what they buy.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of your friends are doing this.
So that social proof is easily broken again by asking for details.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really? Who's doing that? Like, who's wearing that? Who's doing this thing?
Yeah, give me an example. I'm very curious. Why do you say everyone? Who is everyone?
Or in this case, if you actually have proof or data, be like, oh, that's funny because I read an article where they said this thing, right? Now the person has to back up with either a specific data point or they have to admit like, or they may just try and change the subject because now you've been like, oh, you think this is the biggest thing that's going on? Well, I was reading an article that said this thing. I'd be curious where you got your information.
Yeah.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed this quick look at what kind of statements can you make to counter when you feel you're being manipulated. So whether you're in an awkward fight or in some kind of sales situation where you start to feel uncomfortable, looking at a few of the techniques that they're using and then applying the right counter can really help you get out of this situation. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.